this is what every single person walking the face of the earth desperately wants. They want to be heard, they want to be validated, they want to be made to feel important, and they want to be appreciated. And we, as leaders or neighbors, if we give people that and we do so genuinely, I'm telling you, you will change the trajectory of somebody's life. I know this about Facebook. Their top line revenue from 2009 to 2024 grew 21,000%. But when you open up Facebook, what's the opening prompt? What's on your mind? It's a beautiful algorithm. It works perfectly because that.
Welcome to Builders, the podcast for impact-driven leaders who are done carrying it all and ready to scale with clarity, strategy, and freedom. I'm your host, Alex Snyder, strategic growth architect, creator of the CEO Recode, and second brain to leaders who are building brilliant companies without sacrificing every ounce of their time, energy, or sanity. Each episode, I sit down with bold leaders who've rebuilt, recalibrated, or redefined what it means to lead well and live well on their own terms. We talk messy pivots, leadership upgrades, tactical wins, and the deep personal work it takes to build a business that actually works for you. If you love the episode, make sure you follow, rate, and share it with another leader who's building big and wants to build smarter. And if you're listening and thinking, damn, I need someone in the guts of my business with me, let's talk. Book your free business breakdown call using the link in the show notes. In 30 minutes, I'll help you pinpoint where blockers in your time, team, or strategy are silently stalling your growth and define 2 to 3 high-impact shifts you can implement now to regain traction and build momentum. Now, let's dive in. Let's build it better. Ken, welcome to Builders. I am so excited to have you here with us today. You are the founder of the Gray Point Group, and your role is a little different than some of our typical guests. You're a little more similar to me, where you get a window into working with all kinds of builders. So I can't wait to dive in. And as always, if you could give us a quick introduction in your own words as to who you are and what you're building.
Happy to, Alex, and thank you for inviting me. So I am Ken Proctor. I am a keynote speaker, a leadership coach. I run a course called Art of the Question, where I teach people how to ask the right question. And I work with companies from $2 million to over $2 billion. I work with their executives, their managers, their leaders, and I really challenge people. And I speak about how every leader can do what every leader needs to do, which is create a culture that people will literally break the wall down to come work at their company.
Wow. That's powerful. I love it. So take me back a little bit. You are a leader, you work with leaders. So we're going to get some really interesting perspectives in this conversation. But were there some key, inflection points, pivots, mistakes, mentors that really set you on your journey or helped shape your journey into leadership?
Absolutely. First of all, full disclosure, I'm a recovering salesperson. So I started out in sales and I did pretty well in sales. And I actually worked my way up to the president of a division, and one day got fired. And I was thinking about, what do I want to do next? And I actually had an interview 2 weeks later, and the interview went really well. It would be the president of a company, and my boss was the CEO. And I asked her, because I knew this job would involve a lot of travel, and I asked her, Nina, do you ever travel overseas, like to China? Because this job would have involved that. And she said, oh, good heavens, no. My people travel. I don't travel. And when she said the word, Alex, my people, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. And I got offered the position, and I politely declined, told my wife I wanted to start our own company, but we would have to sell our house to do it. And she said, take 5 weeks and write a business plan. We did. I did. Presented it to her, put our house on the market the next day, sold it, and then moved to a rental in another state. And that was in 2007.
Wow.
So a lot of gambling, right?
But started partnership though.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Happily married for many, many years, 34 years. And my wife has always been really supportive. So we moved to Texas and we started this company. Again, this is now the end of 2007. Started it scaled it, sold it, made so many mistakes along the way that if you looked at my body and looked at all the shrapnel wounds that I had from the mistakes I made, you would be impressed. But I have no problem talking about them because you make enough mistakes, you get something called experience. You get enough experience, you get wisdom. And that's where I am today. And that's what I impart to my leaders. And that's what I impart on stage.
So what was it about that experience, that story that told you or that you knew you needed to build your own company?
I did not want to be a my people. And
Mm.
I thought that's a very small indication of how she treats her team. And I wasn't comfortable with that.
Mm.
So I just decided to stop the interview process and realized I really want to work for myself. And that's what it was. And I want a company that reflects my morals, my values, my standards. And I don't know that I could get that working for somebody. And ever since then, I basically, Alex, have become unemployable. I
Isn't that the
can't work
mark
for
of
somebody.
entrepreneurship?
Exactly, exactly. And that was, almost 20 years ago.
Wow. I love that you zeroed in on that because I think it is such a fundamental of entrepreneurship. It is the privilege to build something that reflects the values where you get to show up and be the best version of you and attract in colleagues, partners, clients who also believe in those values and just create this kind of like ecosystem of values that you put out your impact into the world. And so I would love to know from that, you now work with other builders. How did you go from I need to run my own company, I need to reflect my values into the world, to now I'm going to work with other people doing that?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. It took about 7.5 years, but we started the company, scaled it, and sold it. And when I sold it, I was 48 years old. And the money was okay, but it wasn't enough to retire on. So I couldn't understand, like, now what do I do? What's next? And so I hired a career coach. And after a lot of assessments and very deep questions, he said, "You need to be a coach." Huh, okay, why? Well, you're a good listener and you ask great questions.
Mm.
And so I ended up signing on with an organization called Vistage, which puts groups of CEOs and business owners together where we challenge one another. Started at Vistage. The success rate for launching a group is only 22%. You need 8 people in the group to start. Got launched with 9 members very quickly, quickly spiked it to 11 and dropped to 5. And I'm going to tell you whose fault it was, mine. Because again, as a recovering salesperson, I sold what we did instead of asking challenging questions. And so once I figured that out and I started asking challenging questions, I built that group back to full and then launched 3 more groups. And through my coaching, and then now I also, not only am I a Vistage chair, I'm also an executive coach. And people, when somebody says to me, "Hey, why should I use you as a coach?" My stock response is, and this is different from when I was a salesperson, I don't know that you should.
Yeah.
I don't know what your blind spots are. I don't know what your expectations are. So let me ask you a few questions to understand if what you need is what I offer and what you offer is what I need and what I'm looking for. And if it is, hey, we go to the next step of the process. And if it's not, let me introduce you to somebody that might be a better fit.
Mm.
And that really builds the trust meter because people will listen to you if they like you, they buy from you if they trust you. So now my executive coaching business is as big as my Vistage business. And I can only take 5 clients at a time and I'm full. And, I always say this, Alex, please don't engage me if you want me to just ask you questions like, how was your weekend? What do you want? Things like that. Go ahead and hire a golden retriever for that. I mean, just yesterday, I was sitting in on I have a client that's a $2 billion client, and he asked me to sit in on a leadership team meeting. And one guy had to get up and leave early because he coaches his son's little league team. And the leader says, let's all thank Mark for dropping by today. And like you could have heard a pin drop, right? And so afterwards, my client said to me, "Give me your feedback on my leadership uh, and facilitation skills." I said, "You're an ass." And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, do you think that Mark went home and said to his wife, I can't wait to go to work tomorrow morning? No. He said, that's my sense of humor. It's not funny. It's really passive aggressive. So what's the foundation of that? That's the kind of coaching that I did. And I found that the more you challenge people, two things, the more they're willing to pay and the more they want to work with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was my journey.
I love that. You mentioned something that I picked up on when we first met, which was your questions and your listening skills are unique or not something that I would say I encounter regularly. And I talk to a lot of people. And they really pinged my radar. I really, really quickly was like, Ken is somebody who I know he gets below the surface. He really gets to the real challenge, which is what's required to initiate change, right? I fundamentally believe that. I think that we share that belief. And I want to know, what is the secret to that? What is the secret to that? And, I'm going to ask you for tangible
Yep.
takeaways that someone listening
Sure.
can implement if they are not in a position to be working with you or someone like what we.
Again, great question. First of all, let it be said that I am the kind of person that digs at the roots. I don't just bat at the leaves. I
Mm,
mean, that's just who I am. But to be able to dig at the roots, you have to listen for intent, not words. And most people, because of neuroscience, our brains process words at 650 words a minute, but we speak at 150 words a minute. So
mm,
by the time the person is saying something, my brain has already jumped ahead. I know how this is going to end, and I'm busy thinking about my next comment, question, statement,
mhm.
right? But what I've done is I've really slowed the process down and I've stayed intentional about being focused. And don't be dismissive and let that person finish, right? And then, and then ask them a challenging question that they're not expecting. So the behavior modification is don't jump in and don't listen to understand. I'm sorry, you must listen to understand, not reply. Majority of us listen to reply. We don't listen to understand. I listen to understand.
So interesting that you bring that up because just last week, what a really high level executive in my network posted something on LinkedIn about the thing they are working on is to not interrupt people. And I thought it hit me because my exuberance, even I'm better about it when I'm in my kind of advisor coaching role, but in life, I get so excited and I want to jump in and I want to relate, right? I want to relate to this person. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And yes, my brain has gone 5 steps ahead, right? I'm running at this pace. And it was so interesting to see someone share that. And so I thought, oh, I want to go leave a comment. So, about how important I think this is and kudos that they're working on this because that's a self-awareness that, a lot of people don't get to. And it was wild to see the comments of how many other people, again, high level people, successful people, self-aware people were saying, I have this problem too. And what I said to them was, I have, and I'm doing this now with you, I'm like, it comes from a good place. I want to add something or I want to acknowledge them or I'm like so excited about what they're saying. And what I've had to do is I try to make sure that I keep a little notebook and I'll put a little note about what it is I want to say. I won't forget it. It's there, but I don't need to say it right now. I can let the person finish and then I can ask further questions or I can add my point or I can, redirect the conversation if I'm in a position that I should be doing that. But the thing that I'm just so excited that my brain is like, this thing can just go onto a piece of paper. And then I can make a logical decision whether it needs to get shared or not and when. And I know for me, that's a really small thing that's helped me interrupt less. And I would love to hear from you, where does it come from and what can we do? I listen to understand is great, but what's something kind of more tangible and practical that we could take
Sure.
away in our life?
So again, and thank you for sharing that. And I have a word for it that I use in my coaching and in my keynote presentation. Don't hijack. So if I asked you, Alex, where was your last vacation? How would you respond?
Las Vegas.
Oh, I love Las Vegas. I went to Las Vegas 2 years ago and I saw the greatest show. Okay, how many of us do it? Most of us, right? And did I do anything to deepen our engagement? Now, I get it. I want to be relatable to you, and I want to share with you that I also have been to Las Vegas. But in that effort to be relatable and to be liked, guess what I've done? I've dismissed you. I've hijacked you. And I turned the conversation towards me. So what I did, and I raised our children, my wife and I raised our children, that before relating your own experience, you have to ask three questions of that person's trip to Las Vegas before relating your own. Now, you can say, you know what, Alex, I love Las Vegas. Where did you stay? Okay, so that satiates the need to be relatable and to offer something. But now I've gone ahead and I've turned it back over to you. Where did you eat? Did you see any shows? I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and you will literally and metaphorically move closer to me. So please don't hijack. And if you feel yourself the need to hijack, imagine that there's a miniature Ken sitting on your shoulder and brushing your hair back and whispering in your ear, wait, why am I talking? It's an acronym. Okay. Don't do it. Ask three questions. And for goodness sake, don't be a topper. You know what a topper, Alex, is?
I'm excited to
Okay.
find out.
Oh, I got one better than that. Okay. I want to top you. I got one better than I got a story better. Okay. You know what? Whoever relates to that, okay, don't say that. You just denigrated me, right?
I
I got one better than that. Don't do it. So
that.
please don't hijack and don't be a topper and ask three questions about that person's story before relating your own.
I love that. Okay, wait. Why am I talking?
Yep.
Gold, gold. If you were listening, that I love that. That might be the title of the episode. Um, and I love three consultants. So three questions. Any guidance around if you're sitting there and you're at a loss, like, is it like bring in the senses, bring in some like how can somebody who's just like so new to this come up with a good question? Or what is a good question? Is there like a basic
Sure.
thing?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. Again, great question. Okay. A good question is any question that allows the person with whom you're speaking to tell a story about themselves.
Mm.
Okay. So I had an occasion a few months ago. I was sitting across from somebody at a table. I've not met her before. And I said to her, who were you in high school? And how did that lead to where you are today? And she goes, what do you mean, who was I in high school? Were you a brain? Were you a jock? Were you a doper? Who were you? And she said, wow, I was a cheerleader slash doper. Oh my gosh, tell me, how did that get you to where you are today? Well, this woman, Alex, for the next 2 days followed me around wanting me to ask her more questions. So ask somebody questions that allows them to tell their story about themselves. So I might say to you, when you were 7 years old, Alex, did you look up at your parents and say, Mom, Dad, someday I'm going to be an executive coach or a podcast host? Walk me through your journey.
I love that. No,
Walk me
I
through it.
was as unhinged as I am today. I wanted to be a fireman ballerina. Um,
Okay, so how did you go from ballerina fireman to where you are? It's just questions like that.
I love that. I think that's so funny because I often get self-conscious because I think I ask really unhinged, odd questions.
Yeah,
But to your point, yeah, most people end up finding that really interesting because they get to tell their story. And I always am really curious about how people arrived somewhere. So I think that's such a great point is like, don't be there is like almost any question is a good question that if it allows someone to explain or tell a story. And you mentioned something earlier about, don't dismiss, don't denigrate. You want people to feel significant.
that's
And,
right.
I think from the conversations that we've had, that seems like a really large part of what you do. And I'm kind of curious if, what is behind that? Why do you do that? Why is it important?
Yeah.
What's your
Uh,
experience with it?
so in developing my keynote presentation and working with leaders and executive teams and CEOs and C-suite, I have found that the single greatest challenge that I get, and if I got $1 for every person, Alex, that presented me with this issue, you and I could have had this conversation on my yacht, trust me. And
Next.
it is, how the hell do I find great people to work in my company and how do I get them to stay? And then I always immediately come back with this. Why would a great person want to work at your company if you back out compensation? And they stumble to answer that. And
Mhm.
the one thing that everybody wants, I don't care who you are, everybody wants to feel significant. Everybody wants to feel as though they matter. And when my daughter was transitioning from junior high to high school, she asked me, what's the best way to, kind of make friends and fit in? And I said, if you're standing around in a circle of girls and one girl's doing most of the talking and you're about to say something, but you get talked over and then you kind of recoil back into the circle, you don't say anything. She goes, yeah, it happens all the time. If I'm standing next to you and I turn to you and I say, Elizabeth, you were about to say something. I want to hear what you were going to say. What were you going to say? Just that. How would you feel? Great. That's something that we miss as people. Okay. So, what I've learned about significance is that everybody wants to feel as though they matter. I have yet to meet the parent that have looked into their newborn's eyes and said, son, someday I want you to grow up and be mediocre. I've never met that parent, right? Everybody wants to feel as though they matter. Everybody wants to feel significant. So, what I teach in leadership and what I speak about in keynotes is how to make somebody feel as though they matter. So, if I am your boss, Alex, and you're dropping the ball on something, or the report that you submitted wasn't where I needed to be, most people say, Alex, that report, that was a waste of time, or they say something that just, it's not constructive, it's destructive. So what I would say is, Alex, this report didn't quite hit the mark. The desired outcome didn't quite get to where I needed it to be. What do you think you could have done differently? And how could I better have supported you on that? Could we have a collaborative discussion around that?
Mhm.
And then afterwards, I'm going to say to you, you know what, Alex? I feel much better about the direction of this. I'm glad we had this conversation. Now that person feels as though they matter, right? Versus me, and most leaders don't think that way. They just say, I didn't like the report that you submitted, or it wasn't where it needed to be.
This wasn't what
But
I
how do I make you feel about yourself? And, I really, you asked me how I came to this, and it's really the foundation happened 51 years ago. 51 years ago. Okay. Yes. So I grew up in Boston.
I got
I, I,
prepared here for this.
I grew up in Boston,
Mhm.
and I'm at the airport picking up my grandparents way before TSA. And my dad says to me, there's Dave Cowens sitting over there. So who's Dave Cowens? Dave Cowens was the center for the Boston Celtics, all-star MVP. My dad said, go talk to him. So I walked over to him. I'm 4'5". I haven't hit my growth spurt, right? He stands up. He's 6'10" and a half. Alex, he could not have been more genuine, more affable, warm, engaging. He was wonderful. And he said to me, are you a basketball player? What position do you play? Are you a righty or a lefty? He asked me a bunch of questions, right? And then finally, I asked him, I said, may I please have your autograph? And he said, on one condition. What's that? That you give me yours first. And I blurted out, but I'm not famous. And he said, you may not be famous now, Ken, but someday you're going to be, because I'm a great judge of character. And I walked away from that conversation feeling like a major stud, right? That Dave Cowens asked me for my autograph. Of course, nobody believed me, right? But he did. But I realized all these years later, how did he make me feel about myself during a conversation? And I came up with something that I call the foundational five. And this is what every single person walking the face of the earth desperately wants. They want to be heard. They want to be validated. They want to be made to feel important. They want to be believed in, and they want to be appreciated.
Hmm.
And we, as leaders or neighbors, if we give people that and we do so genuinely, because you can't be disingenuous about that, I'm telling you, you will change the trajectory of somebody's life, and then by default, yours changes. And that's how I came up with the one challenge that everybody has is they feel insignificant. And I I know this about Facebook. Their top line revenue from 2009 to 2024 grew 21,000%. But when you open up Facebook, what's the opening prompt? What's on your mind?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful algorithm. It works perfectly because that's how desperate people are to feel heard. And by the way, I'm not on Facebook. The post that got me off Facebook for the rest of my life, somebody wrote, "I just ate a great tasting banana." And I thought, oh my gosh, I cannot recapture that 1 second that I spent reading that. And that's how desperate they were to feel heard, that they post about a great tasting banana. I'm out. But it really substantiated that everybody wants to feel as though they matter, they've got something important to say, and they are significant.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we could have a whole episode on the rise of social media and how it fulfills so many unmet needs. But I want to bring this back to, people listening are running companies, want to run companies, want to build that place where their values and their impact on the world comes to life with a team. And you said, team retention, right? Why would people work for you and stay there if you took away the money component, that part of the
Yeah.
equation? And you said, it's about making them feel significant, which I think, I talk often about the cascading KPIs. Where are we going and how does what I do contribute to that success?
Yep.
You also talked about, though, the authenticity and genuine interaction, like that component of the interaction in your story and in general. How does that play in, and what are, I'm a metrics girl. I'm like, how do you know? And I like a leading metric, right? Like, what is the habit you want to build so that the outcome's going to happen? Because if you wait till the outcome, then, usually that's a lot of time passing and then you got to go back and try again. So like, how can we be looking for the leading indicators that as a leader, we're doing the right thing?
I look at turnover and retention. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's what I look at. And again, I ask the question to leaders and managers, if you were to back out compensation, why would an employee want to stay here? Why would an employee want to come here? What are you doing to attract the best and the brightest? And even though I ask that question all the time, people struggle to answer. And something that I've coached my leadership teams and my Vistage members to in an interview, if you are interviewing with me, Alex, okay, for a position, and I really like you, one of the last questions I'm going to ask to you is, what are your expectations of this company around professional development for you? Who asks that question? Okay. And immediately, Alex is going to be like, whoa, like, what? I've made it about you. And one of my clients was suffering from kind of high turnover, and I challenged her to come up with a protocol. Now, she leads a company of about 125 employees, not huge. And when somebody is going to join her company, she writes their family a handwritten note a week before they start and said, "We are so excited to have Alex come join our family. Please celebrate with yours." And she puts a $250 gift card into like Cheesecake Factory. Okay. Now, for $250, how is Alex showing up on day one?
Ticker tape parade.
How many people do you think Alex told about the $250 gift card?
Yeah, absolutely.
And her retention started to increase and her turnover started to nosedive just by doing something like that.
Mm.
And so, to me, everybody wants to feel as though they matter. We always talk about, what is your purpose? They want to feel like they're contributing. They really do. That's really what it's about.
Yeah, love that. So I talk often about, success on your terms, or, wealthy leadership being the ability to build a company while building yourself and your life and your health and sanity and family. And I'm curious if there are, either from your own kind of journey or from the exposure you get to so many incredible builders and leaders, definitions of success and that what is success on your terms, or what are unique versions of success that you've seen others define, and also, any maybe trade-offs that you're no longer willing to make or lessons you've learned along the way.
Yeah, thank you. So my definition of success has evolved. Okay. So when I was in my 20s, I wanted to own a nice car. That was success. Okay. Now I'm 60, and it took me years, Alex, to come up with this definition, but I'm very comfortable with it. It's very short. Here it is. My definition of success. I can't wait to go to work in the morning. I can't wait to come home to my family at night.
Mm.
That's it.
Simple.
Period. Right? Now, a lot of people think, well, success is, and it's interesting. I have a client that is extraordinarily well off. He's done a great job with his company. He sold his first company for $52.5 million, right? And he's got all the trappings of wealth. And one day he said to me at dinner, people would be surprised how lonely I am.
Mm.
That's the trade-off. That during the time of building this great company, he spent so much time at work, he alienated his family. And the downside is that he's lonely now because he's can enjoy a life, right? But he's not really close with his wife or his kids.
Mm.
And so to me, the trade-off is you have to be intentional. And I always ask myself this question. I'm 75 years old. I'm sitting on my couch and I'm thinking to myself, I've really lived a great life personally and professionally. What do I need to change today to make sure I can say that at 75? And I
Mm.
think about that. And I think, you know what? I need to spend more time reading and less time on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to spend more time talking to my neighbor and less time, doing like watching something, right?
Yeah.
I'm just very intentional about that. And when I start to drift, and God bless YouTube, they've got a great algorithm. I start out typing in AC/DC live, and all of a sudden I'm watching a water buffalo, be eaten by a snake, right? 3 hours later, right? So I have to be intentional about, you know what? I'm going to reward myself with 10 minutes of YouTube. It's my addiction after I've done A, B, and C.
Mm-hmm. I love that question. You asked that question the first time I met you, and it really stuck with me. So for anyone listening, I just want to repeat that question was, at 75 years old, I'm sitting on my couch and I'm reflecting on a fulfilling personal and professional life. What has to be true for me to feel like it was professionally and personally?
That's it. Yeah,
I
that's
love it.
it.
And what needs to be true, and therefore, what do I need to change today
That's right. That's
to
right.
make that happen? I love
Yep.
my
Yep.
quick follow-up on the client, which obviously as much as you can disclose or not, did he have the visibility and intentionally make that trade-off during the growth phase? Or was that a reflecting, looking back, would have done it differently, or that was the cost, the price of this success?
That was a reflection. But he kidded himself to think I'm doing this for my family. Wrong. He's doing this for himself. And
What I want to get into.
yeah, he was okay, and he was telling himself a lie, and I think that he was sort of aware of it. Remember, I dig at the roots, I don't bat at the leaves. And he one time said to me, my daughter is a 30-year-old loser. That's what he said to me. And that hit me quite viscerally, Alex, because I'm the father of two daughters. And I looked at him and I said, what part of that statement is your fault? And he looked down at the ground and he looked up at me and he said, most of it. Okay. So he knew that, right? He knew it. But was he willing to change as this young lady was growing up into an adult? Probably not, because he's, quote, doing this for them.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how that manifested itself. He's alienated himself from his kids.
Right.
So you have to, I think that at a subconscious level, we're aware that we're not spending the time we should be. And again, a question I love to ask my clients, okay? CEO, let's say this is a man, husband, father, rank them. Which is most important to you to be great at? Not an easy question to answer. And
Mm.
the answer that I get almost always, Alex, is this. Well, I know how I should answer it, but if I'm being honest, it's probably CEO, father, husband. Hmm. Okay. And is that what you want when you're 75 years old? Is that what you want?
Mhm.
No. So what do you need to do today to change that? So I'm not giving them the answers. I'm questioning their answers.
Yeah. I
That's
love
what a coach does.
you shared this because I see the same things. And my clients, when I first started, were all male fathers, husbands, business owners. I have a little more diversity now. But
Yep.
the thing that I saw as a pattern that repeated itself was through good intention, they were over functioning and under delivering. Maybe not the best summary, but I'm trying to keep it somewhat short because I want to ask you a follow-up question here. But
Yep.
they were they wanted to be a great leader, father, husband, etc. And by trying to do everything, they were letting down the people that they wanted to be doing it for, both at work and at home. And similarly, I want to do this, but I know my actions are reflecting a different set of priorities.
Yep.
And I heard a long, 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 long time ago somebody say, people think my priorities are wrong. And it was actually a husband and wife who both were incredible coaches in different ways. But he said, my first priority is be the best version of me so that I can be the best partner, so I can be the best parent. If I don't take care of myself first, I cannot show up in the best way in those other relationships. And I
Hmm.
thought that was such an interesting, at the time, very controversial take. I feel like it's maybe a little less controversial now, but that there were certain things in this person's life that they said, these are actually my first priority before I show up for this, and this. And they said, even to the degree, which I very much agree in, because I think children and employees are the same, they don't tolerate hypocrites. The whole like, do what I do what I say, not what I do. It was like, if I'm not taking care of myself, if I'm not being a good partner, then I can't actually be a good father, no matter how well I parent. Like if I'm not living those values, then my children will not get what they need.
Yeah, that's
Is that,
exactly right.
yeah.
Yeah. You know, the only thing I ever ask for my kids for Father's Day or my birthday is a homemade card. And that tradition started when we started our company and money was very tight, right? And we started homemade cards. And to this day, that's what we give. We give them to everybody, right? And every year I get almost the same thing from my children. Kids spell love Time. That's a quote from Jesse Jackson. And that they are so grateful that I gave them time. And about 14 years ago, I actually, Alex, changed the title in my family to Chief Memory Maker.
Oh,
That's my new title.
I
And
love.
we started going on trips that would, and the one thing was that we went on as a family. We had to do one thing outside of our comfort zone because that's where growth happens, right? And for 14 years, we've been going on these trips to create memories because let me tell you, as I get older, memories are the only dividend that I'm really concerned about.
Yeah,
They pay a great dividend.
I love that. Talk to me more about growth and comfort zones, because I think this is something that you are probably pushing your clients for a lot, right?
That's right.
What's the
Yep.
connection, and how do we keep track of and intentionally pursue that growth?
Yeah. So our brain, again, is hardwired to keep us safe. And keeping us safe is doing things that we know what the outcome is going to be. But if you want to grow personally and professionally, you got to do things that challenge you. They're outside of your comfort zone. And so I realized with my family that, like, one year we went to Paris and Zermatt, Switzerland, and my daughter and my wife are afraid of heights. So I thought, you know what, let's go paragliding. And I didn't tell them until we got to the place. and we paid for it. And they're like, "Are you?" And my wife was furious at me, right? She's like, "You know that?" And I'm like, "Just try it." And because we all went, and after she landed, I said, "How was it?" She said, "After having kids, it was the best thing I've ever done." So now, guess what? Now she's willing to try new things. That's how you have to grow. Her brain said, "No, don't do this." And it's the same with leaders. It's the same with leaders. You have to challenge them and push them to get outside of their comfort zone to grow.
Mhm.
And a lot of my leaders feel very uncomfortable asking questions to their direct reports, to their employees, and I'm challenging, go deeper, ask them something. Don't just, "How was your weekend?" "Good." "What was good about it?" "What'd you do?" "I went to a new Mexican restaurant." "Well, where was it? What did you try? How were the margaritas?" Keep asking them questions so that they feel engaged. But that's outside of their comfort zone. And moreover, this is the one thing, Alex, if you are a leader and you really want to engender trust, do this. If you screw up, okay, say, "You know what? This is on me. I screwed up. And I need to do a better job of A, B, and C."
Mhm.
Now, a lot of leaders, that's way outside of their comfort zone because they think it diminishes their reputation. It enhances it.
Yeah.
Who among us have not made mistakes? But when you're able to say, "Yeah, this is on me. I screwed up and I need to do a better job of this," that engenders trust.
Yes.
And I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah. So it's perfect. I wanted to ask you, we talked about success, failure, regret. How does that factor in to building a legacy, a family, a company, a team?
Be willing to talk about it. Be willing to admit where you did well, where you fell short.
Mm.
I'm certainly not perfect, right? And I have no problem with admitting that, right? But unfortunately, we live in a social media society where everything is perfect. And I am telling you that if you post, instead of posting, "So proud of my, 12-year-old daughter who made, the cheerleading team," versus, "You know what, my son got a D minus in calculus," or whatever. Which do you think will get more likes? Okay. The D minus,
Mhm.
because you're willing to admit those things. I mean, not that you admit that about your kid, but I have no problem admitting things of all the mistakes that I made because I made tons of them. Right. And so that is how I shaped who I am as a leader, who I am as a coach, but most importantly, who I am as a husband and father. And let me tell you, Alex, something I learned about apologies. Okay. This comes from personal experience. Every apology needs three parts. "I'm sorry. This was totally my fault. How do I make it better?" You say that to your spouse, you say that to your employee, you say that to your boss, and people will give you grace. But if I say, "Well, I'm sorry, but if you had just done that," nope. Don't dilute an apology with an excuse, please. And for goodness sake, don't make it about you. If you had, "I'm sorry, but," or don't say, "I'm sorry you feel that way." No,
Yeah, no.
"I'm sorry. This is totally my fault. How do I make it right?" People will give you grace. That's sort of all the teachings, everything I've learned to become who I am.
And to your point about social media, I mean, I talk about this a lot with, I think, entrepreneurship. Love that it's out there, love that it's more accessible, but it's also very much being sold as a panacea, cure all, and end state, as opposed to like the reality of getting to that end state, right? And so to your point, like nobody gets anywhere that any of us want to see online without a ton of failure. And
Yeah.
generally, in one way or another, without learning to apologize, to your point, right? Without taking accountability and responsibility. And I love what you said, don't deflect, don't, yeah, "I'm sorry you feel that way." It's got to be one of the worst statements to make,
Right. It's not
man,
an apology. Yep.
not an apology.
That's right.
So I'm curious, and we've talked about this in some different ways, but you have seen a multitude of trajectories alongside your own growth. You have spent a lot of time with people who are very financially successful, and other versions of success or other definitions of success. Are there common threads, places where people most often go wrong and have to kind of wreck and rebuild, or anything that you really believe is most vital for executives and entrepreneurs to understand in order to scale, to achieve their goals, to develop their legacy?
Yes. So again, I have to share with you, I had a CEO that owned a very large company, owned a big building, housed his company, and in front of the building, in the parking lot, was a sign that said reserved for the CEO. What message do you think that sends everybody else? Okay. Now compare that with I have a client that I've had for 10 years, and he leads a five-star hotel property here in Houston. Very, very recognizable, very successful. And one day he and I were walking into the restaurant for lunch, and the hostess was new to the company. And he introduced himself and he said, "Hi, I'm Steve. We work together. I don't believe we've met." That's how he introduced himself. Take that and compare it to with reserved for the CEO. What message do you think is being sent to the employees? Okay. Two different trajectories. So the one thing that I want people to take away is I'm so impressed with your title, but not really. I'm more impressed with you as a person. I'm more impressed with how you make me feel about myself. I'm not that impressed with I'm the CEO. And the other thing, Alex, you remember Miniature Ken sitting on your shoulder saying, wait? Okay. So there's another thing that Miniature Ken loves to whisper in your ear. Okay. And here it is. So what? Okay. So, I'm leading a $200 million company. So what? I have three homes. So what? Okay. We are great with customer service. So what? Okay. Make it about the other person. I'm not that impressed. And if you are the kind of person that is impressed with you're the CEO, and I get it, a lot of people are, but I mean, I work with them. So I'm impressed with the person. I'm impressed with the mother, the father, the spouse. I'm impressed with the person that says, yeah, you know what? Look, when people ask me all the time, I get invited for golf dates. Alex, it's taken me 25 years just to be terrible at golf. And I have no problem telling people that. Let's pick something else. I'm terrible at it, right? People aren't impressed with those that just beat their chest. And again, in our own family, this is what my wife and I, how we raised our children. Don't walk through the door and say, whoa, here I am, right here. Ho, here. Hey, right here. Ho. Walk through the door and say, there you are. And when you do that and you make it about the other person, you will be successful.
Love that. Walk through the door and say, there you are.
Yeah, in our family, we say no lambs, which stands for look at me. No lambs, look at me. There you are.
Your daughters are so fortunate to have grown up with this level of insight and guidance. I can only imagine how much it has shaped the young women that they are.
And one son.
And one son, sorry.
Yep. Okay.
All of them, young
That's
women
okay.
and men that they are.
Yep.
Wow. So we've talked a lot about the companies that you've built and sold, which we didn't even get into that, but you're going to come back. I hope. I would love to talk more.
Sure.
And the leaders that you're supporting build companies where they don't say things like my people.
Right.
But I know that you are continuing to evolve, and I would love to understand a little bit about, what is next for Ken Proctor. Where else will you be bringing your knowledge and depth of expertise?
Yeah. So, there's a quote, and I think it's by Pablo Picasso. And the quote is this: your goal in life is to find your purpose. Your purpose in life is to give it away. So I'm at the point in my life where I want to give it away, not for free, but that's why I'm transitioning to be a keynote speaker. And I want to share some of the takeaways that I've shared with you and your audience today with leaders and employees and people like that. And I want leaders to understand the value of making your employees feel significant. That's so important. You got to do it genuinely. But what did Dave Cowens, the center for the Boston Celtics, what did he do? He made me feel significant. He did. A nine-year old kid, right? And I remember the story 51 years later. And how often do we enter into a conversation and we think, you know what, I want Alex to feel like she's heard, validated, believed, and made to feel important and appreciated. At
Mm.
least one of those. And if I do that, you will stay at the company. You will feel as though you matter. And it's not payroll, it's not perks. It's honestly, it's significance.
I
And
love
so I want to be a keynote, sorry, not I want to be, because I am a keynote speaker. I've spoken to Merrill Lynch, I've spoken to Bank of America, spoken to some big organizations. I want to do more of that. And
it.
that's my impact.
They need it. I love that your moving into keynote speaking is giving you also just, it sounds obvious, but a broader audience, right? Because when you're coaching, you can work with, someone at the top or a certain individual, but this new format is going to allow you to reach so many more layers, so many more organizations. So I'm so excited to see you doing more of that. To your point, you're already doing it. Maybe I would love to one day we share the stage. It would be so cool to be at the same event sharing our
Yeah,
knowledge. It's been such a pleasure. Can we have a tradition of a few rapid fire questions at wrap
sure.
things up? You can have a one word answer. You can pass if you don't have something that pops to mind.
Okay,
There's 5 of them. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Amazing. So, question number 1 is, what is one decision that changed everything for you as a leader?
The person I asked to marry me.
Mm.
Wait, do I have to give you a one word answer?
No, 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 no. It
No.
just can be as short as one word.
Yeah.
I love that.
As a leader, my wife changed my trajectory.
Amazing. What does strategy feel like when you're doing it well?
Uh, I ask this, thank you for asking. That's a great question. I ask this question all the time. When does work not feel like work? When does strategy not feel like work? When you're in the flow, okay? When you've got a vision and you can execute on the vision because it's really, really clear. That's when strategy doesn't feel like work. When you have a clear vision of what you want and how to get there. And then you ask your executive team to execute on that vision.
Is there a book, podcast, or person that really cracked something open for you?
Um, a book and a person. Okay. So when I graduated college, my brother handed me a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I reread it once a year, and now the pages are falling out. It's highlighted, it's marked up, right? But I always read it. That was the book. And the person that influenced me was my grandfather because he had this ability to make people feel special. And, we walked into, he loved to play golf, and we would go into the club, and there would be Willie, the guy that cleans the clubs, and he would say, Ken, if you want your clubs clean to an inch of their life, you got to give them to Willie, right? It was my grandfather that taught me the value of this.
I love that. What is something you've said never again to in your business?
Working for somebody. I'm unemployable.
Yes.
Yeah. I am never going to compromise my integrity for a sale. Years ago, I did that, and I will not do that again.
Mm. And the last question is, if you had a free weekend and zero obligations, how would you spend it?
Um, Hiking with my family in some remote place. I mean, I just in this past weekend planned my wife's and my 35th anniversary trip. We're going to Patagonia, and I can't wait. And I would do that.
How long are you going for?
13 days, and I wanted to go for 3 months, but we're
Like,
13 days. Yeah.
What an incredible anniversary trip. I cannot wait to hear about it.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
happy to share.
Ken, thank you so, so much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge today. If people do want to find you, learn from you, work with you, what's the best way to get in touch? We'll make sure we put it in the notes.
So my website is kennethproctor.com, and you can just email me at ken@kennethproctor.com. And if you email me, I will respond to you. I don't ghost anybody.
Wonderful. Thank you again for joining us on Builders. It has been such a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Alex.
That's a wrap for this episode of Builders, where we get real about what it actually takes to grow companies that perform without grinding you into the ground. If today's convo sparks something for you, here's what to do next. Follow the show, drop a 5-star review, and share it with someone else who's building big. Don't let it be lonely at the top. If you're ready for more clarity, more leadership freedom, and less of a duct tape and go growth vibe, let's connect. Book your free business breakdown call using the link in the show notes. In 30 minutes, I'll help you pinpoint where blockers in your time, team, or strategy are silently stalling your growth. Walk away with a personalized fix-it list that gives you the clarity you've been craving on what to shift now to regain traction and build momentum. For more tools, insights, and my no-fluff takes on leadership and scaling strategically, join the Builders Club, also linked in the show notes. You can also head over to leaderswhobuild.com, where you'll find all the links to peep my creds, see client wins, or just confirm that yes, I went to the gym today. Until next time, keep leading boldly, building smart, and living success on your terms.